all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Double Feature Podcast. I'm your host, Dean, joined by the having trouble with literally everything that involves his computer, David. How are you?
Afraid.
Afraid?
I feel like this is all bad omens for what's to come in any situation.
Just a
over
little
the next
bit.
few days.
You want to give a little context as to what's going on here?
Well, of course, on our election episode, this being the election episode, with any hope you are listening to this either as you're watching the world burn down or, well, B, as you're watching the world burn down.
You know.
But to not be so pessimistic, the audio for the original recording to this episode failed, and now we're back recording it a couple days before election.
Yeah, usually the recordings for these, we do these probably a week or two in advance.
Yeah, at least like 2. It felt like we did it 2 weeks ago. And
Yeah.
that's partially why. You know what? Let's do a restart, Dean. Let's breathe in.
So yeah, but before when we talked about the point of this episode was to make people feel good about America, feel good about American politics, and now we're like
That's a joke.
Yeah, we're in the death zone now.
Yeah, it's getting closer and closer to the death zone by the day. The darkness creeps in closer. And at least next episode, frankly, we'll have a laugh at the political machine. And for now, we're going to watch this, well, frankly, fake fantasy crap about the political machine.
I mean, I don't know if it's fake, but it's definitely rose-tinted. I'll give you that.
Rose-tinted is a good way to put it.
Yeah.
And then if we're speaking about it in a less, presently emotioned way, then both these movies, yeah, they made us feel good about politics when we watched them initially.
Yeah.
I can't deny that I had feelings for
Yeah.
Abraham Lincoln after watching one of these movies.
You had the feels going on.
Yeah.
But you gotta be careful. Abraham Lincoln got canceled. It was a whole thing. Come on.
No way he got canceled.
Yeah. You didn't know that?
No.
I'm pretty sure, yeah. People tore down his statues and said he was a monster. You didn't hear about that? And it wasn't the people you think it would do it. But whatever. Besides the politics thing.
Yeah.
This is fine.
That statement didn't lead me any closer to finding out who would do it. So.
Exactly. So again, but there you go. We're generally we are pretty dedicated to not going overly political on this because we're a movie podcast, goddammit, and we want you to make you feel good about talking about movies.
Yeah, that was not the point. The point of this episode was solely to find something after our glorious horror movie month to lead us into the end of the year, and well, it's the elephant and the donkey in the room right now. So, but these are two good movies. I will say that.
Oh
much.
yeah, I'll open up by saying I didn't have a major issue with either of these movies. Like usually, one of us has an issue with at least one of the movies we bring in, either like little nitpicky things or like we just didn't like one of them. But
Yeah.
I can say both of these I can generally say I enjoyed both of them.
We did.
Yeah.
And to get to what we've watched this week.
Oh yeah, we should probably say that.
Yeah, we are watching Mr. Smith Goes to Washington and The American President.
Yeah, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, directed by Frank Capra, starring Jimmy Stewart. It's considered one of the best films of all time. It's always in those like American AFI lists or the Sight and Sound stuff. It's on the list somewhere.
Yeah.
And The American President, not a lot of people have probably seen this, but this was the precursor to like The West Wing. It was written by Aaron Sorkin, directed by Rob Reiner, stars Michael Douglas.
Yeah.
Yeah, Michael Douglas. Sorry. Michael and Kirk Douglas look exactly the same, except there's like a 50-year age difference.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of like I think we'll find that as one of our talking points eventually when we get to the two kind of star actors of that movie and their family acting lineage. because Martin Sheen's there, and it's impossible to ignore who his son is.
Well, it's also impossible to look at Martin Sheen and not be like, oh, you went from looking like Emilio Estevez when you were younger to looking like Charlie Sheen when you were in your 50s. It's weird.
Mixed with a leprechaun.
Mixed with a leprechaun because he's very short.
Very short.
But yeah. So, Dave, why don't you tell the people what Mr. Smith Goes to Washington is about? Give them a log line. Let them, for people who might not have seen it.
Mr. Smith Goes to Washington is about a small-town scout leader that is plucked out of the Midwest by lobbyists to become a puppet state senator, despite his passion and dedication to democracy.
That just sounds like it's going to be like one of those cheesy, feel-good Hallmark movies.
Yeah, you'd think there would be a lot more scandal to this movie, but it is very... I think I described it as PG earlier, and it's kind of... It's weird how childlike it is when it views politics, but...
Well, it also because that movie came out in 1939, I think. It was... Because when that movie came out, I think politics was still kind of rosy, I guess. Well, I'm... Okay, politics has never been rosy. It's never been pretty, but, there wasn't as many scandals, I guess, per president. Because what is it? We hadn't seen Kennedy's assassination. We hadn't had the whole Gulf of Tonkin thing with LBJ. We didn't get the whole Monica Lewinsky stuff. We didn't get the Cold War. All that. This was before World War II.
Well, speaking of Monica Lewinsky, by the way,
all
that, the American President is about the leader of the free world pines after a fiery environmental lobbyist at risk of his re-election.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
No, that sounds like a romantic Hallmark movie.
Well, like we were saying, they really didn't see what was coming in the near future.
Yep. So that came before the Bill Clinton, Monica Lewinsky thing.
Mm-hmm.
For those who don't know, one of our former presidents was impeached because he lied on the stand about boinking an intern in the Oval Office.
Wasn't that at once a gold standard for how we operate?
At one point, yeah.
What a different time.
What a time to be alive. But yeah, so that's kind of the interesting thing about both these movies is that the politics within them seems kind of quaint. I guess
they're familiar, but so totally different from what we have.
Yeah, again, we're not gonna get into the dumpster fire. All right, everything is fine. Dog with house on fire, drinking a cup of coffee. Everything is fine.
Yeah, but even like for the American president, you'd think that it looks more familiar than it is.
Yeah.
Even though that this movie really is 25 years old now. I mean.
Oh yeah, that's the thing. This movie is really old. I think this is Aaron Sorkin's second or third movie, something like that.
The first handful.
Yeah, because I know his first movie was A Few Good Men. That was I think the first script he got produced. So this was either his second or third.
Yeah, I'm gonna pop open the IMDb real quick just to check on that because I am genuinely interested.
Yeah. Because I know they took a huge chunks of the working stuff for him to do The West Wing.
Right. So, A Few Good Men was 1992.
Okay.
And is his first writing credit, which is a hell of a writing credit.
Real good. What is it, the top 2 or 3 courtroom dramas of all time?
Yeah, if not an instant classic upon its release.
Oh yeah.
Malice came next. Never heard of that.
Same.
I'd be interested to know. I'm gonna open link in new tab on that one.
Save for a minute.
And then The American President was right after that.
Okay. But yeah, so it is kind of weird, right? That you could justify why Mr. Smith Goes to Washington seems so foreign to modern eyes in terms of the politics it's pining for, because what the whole point of Mr. Smith Goes to Washington is that his co-senator is in bed with this like big money real estate tycoon kind of guy, and has been secretly selling him land that is going to be basically turned into this industrial thing, but it needs the Senate to basically forget about the land, right?
Yes, and in the process of doing so, they hire Mr. Smith, that plucky little.
Boy Scout leader.
He's like. Poetically, he's like the pluck of a banjo mixed with the smell of an apple pie. He's.
As American as you could possibly get, because it's Jimmy Stewart in his prime.
Yeah, and Jimmy Stewart is perfect for the role.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he's squirrely and stringy as the character demands to be.
And he also plays every line as sincere as possible.
Absolutely.
I think that's a big thing about Jimmy Stewart's acting style, is that no matter what he says, he sounds completely sincere. Like, his entire heart is behind everything he's saying.
Which is such a odd acting style. It's not that I don't think we don't have that nowadays. It's that this kind of sincerity is different.
Yeah.
Because it's very stage acting, kind of. You know, there's an element to which this feels not like a movie actor, but more like he's performing a play on the steps of the Washington Monument.
Actually, kind of. Because a lot of the actors in this, I think that's the issue with older movies like this, because, again, this came out in 1939. You know, talking pictures had only been around for, like, 20 years at that point.
Yeah, I believe in our previous discussion, we had pinpointed this movie as being right before the onset of noir and kind of right after the boom of the 30s, like, romantic comedies.
Yeah, which Frank Capra basically defined that genre.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing, because Frank Capra is considered one of the best directors to have ever lived.
I'd say that's fairly correct.
Yeah, he essentially invented the romantic comedy for, like, talking films. He broke Clark Gable. He gave him his first, like, starring role, and Clark Gable became the king of Hollywood. This is Jimmy Stewart's first, like, major film role, which, again, by the way, is insane. But yeah, no, he made a lot of, like, insanely good movies. Probably his most popular movie that people would know is he's the guy who directed It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah.
And It's a Wonderful Life has been a staple of Christmas time since that movie was made.
Yeah, and in a similar way, I think it's not hard to notice that the heart of a movie like It's a Wonderful Life is bleeding over into this, and that's why we get all this, like, cynical commentary on why we feel odd about how the characters feel about politics. Is it does feel a little bit like that was the lens in which he tried to transplant onto this movie, which is, again, insane to think of almost 100 years later, but
Actually, yeah, we're getting really close to that, because what is it in...
Well, it's at 81 years at this point. But,
yeah.
But it feels like 100 years ago.
Well, yeah. I mean, everybody who was in this movie has passed on at this point. Maybe except for maybe some of the kid actors.
Yeah. And God bless those kid actors, right?
Oh, yeah. They're... Okay. So, I guess back in the olden days, the people who used to, like, shuffle documents from, like, one senator to another senator across the room used to be, like, kids.
Yeah, they're called, like, boy runners or something stupid.
Yeah,
like
they're basically, like, you know what a newsie is from, like, musicals and stuff. They're like those. They grab their things with a little ball cap and they run them across the Senate floor, and they are just the epitome of the gee willikers, mister, I'm gonna go and do this thing. They are the little rascals.
Yeah.
But yeah,
it's like from the get-go, there's this tone set in the movie that feels so foreign. I mean, like the scene that opens the film is expositional. Basically, that's all it really is. It's the governor of the state, I believe.
Yeah, the governor of the state finds out that one of his senators, like, dropped dead of a heart attack.
Yeah.
And that means like, oh, we don't have an actual election to appoint a new senator for another like 8 months. And what that means is they need to hold a special appointment to basically have somebody fill the seat, because there can't be an empty seat in the Senate for, I don't know, X number of days or weeks or whatever. So the governor gets a special appointment to put somebody in there until the election time. And he's getting thrown out with all these names. There's the one guy who is like the big, money guy who's like, oh, you're going to appoint my stooge.
Yeah, the big cheese.
Yeah, the big cheese. He wants them to appoint like his yes man stooge. He wants to appoint one of his yes man stooges, but the problem is like the people won't go for it, and the governor wants to win re-election too. So he ends up picking Mr. Smith because his kids suggested him, and he was also like, oh, this guy's like a country rube. He has no idea what politics is. We can just show him the glitz of Washington, and he'll just vote however we tell him to vote.
Yeah.
But they find out that Mr. Smith's got some morals, I guess.
Yeah, it's like the character is introduced in a very on-the-nose way where it really did feel like they just needed to shoehorn him into the story somehow.
Yeah.
But certainly, I think, because I'm not going to at all comment on how Capra ever came up with this story, because it's like trying to say, like, this is how I think Einstein came up with E equals MC squared. It's stupid for me to even assume things, but...
Yeah, I mean, because I think it's based on a book, but it's also based on, like, the Teapot Dome scandal for one of the...
yeah, you did mention that.
Yeah, for one of the sitting presidents back then, and then there's a whole... Like, this movie was a slapdash of a different influences that people could guesstimate, but I have no idea how he came up with the actual story.
Yeah, but certainly Mr. Smith is the character at the center of everything that really... is the tent pole for why we're watching this movie, of which we are introduced to him by way of conducting a child marching band.
Yeah, like the most, wholesome shit you can think of. At the time, now it's creepy. That 2020 vision,
Yeah, I mean, I guess it would just be replaced by like a middle school band teacher, but what's more troubling is how they're playing like America the Beautiful or something like this.
Yeah.
And the energy and vigor in which he is conducting this band is like, is this guy really, he's like 30 years old, really?
You're watching this and you're just like, there's no one is this patriotic. Come on now.
Yeah.
Please.
But then again, that's the cynicism.
That's our 2020 cynicism.
Yeah, bleeding into the fact that this is 1939 America. And the thing I noticed most, I guess, is that there's this... It made me realize the exponential change in American culture between... Like, the difference between 1776 and 1939 is only marginally different, versus the difference between 1939 and 2020 is exponentially.
Yeah, there's a huge spike. Well, we'll say 1776 to like 1939, like the major difference is that there wasn't any real mass media to speak of.
Yeah, I guess if you put it that way, then the turn of the century really was when mass media started to happen.
Yeah, that's when like magazines were getting like literacy had an uptick, so people could read newspapers and magazines more. Radio came around in the 20s, something like that. Yeah. Movies came out, around that time, and that's when like talking pictures, like newsreels and all that stuff, and TV came out in the 50s. And I think when TV came out, it became a thing that every house had to have a TV. That's when things got a little worse. And also the 60s did not help the Kodak America image.
Yeah, it's an interesting little through line you fell upon there, because I think this movie also notices the influence of media on the political landscape, because that's kind of the first obstacle Smith runs into in Washington.
Oh yeah,
his portrayal by the newspapers of his arrival, which is I think is the funniest part of the movie.
Oh no, it's hilarious, because you're watching it and it's like these like newspaper men are just trying to make him look like this immature, like child thing with the
even angry at times.
Or yeah, angry and loud and boisterous, and then you're looking at this and you're like, I would love to have politicians be smeared like this now. Like if that's how we're lying about them, I'd take that.
I would totally like the smears of politicians to be a lie, like most of these are.
Oh yeah.
Which is increasing. Another part of this is that this is a time when politicians could remain public figures, and I mean to say public figures as in they're idealized and they're stereotyped.
Yeah.
We know what they are, but now, well, that's becoming increasingly hard.
We know exactly who they are instead of we knew exactly what they were.
Even and despite the allegations and negations of any of those allegations.
Yeah.
There's plenty, it's a mess, as the next episode will describe.
Yeah.
But all that aside, once Smith settles into Washington, he decides to write an act, as you do.
Yeah, he will propose a bill or something. Yeah,
with his plucky little secretary, I guess is her role?
I think that's her role. Yeah, basically she's his handler that they've appointed to like watch him because he has no idea how politics works.
Yeah. Clarissa Saunders, played by Jean Arthur, very good role.
Very good, and really good actress.
If we're cynical, then she is the king of them all.
Oh yeah,
because even in 1939, she hates it.
Oh, she knew. Yeah, she knew exactly how the world worked.
Yeah. In
this movie, and it's really fun because I think she has some of the best lines in the movie.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's. Well, speaking of those romantic comedies, it's like the snappiness and wittiness of those. Of that dialogue from those movies.
Oh yeah.
Really bleeds over into this character to almost become like the precursor to the. I know that it existed in literature, but the precursor to like a femme fatale type.
Yeah.
Where they're
quick-witted, they're smart, they're in control of the situation, they know what's going on. Oh yeah.
But she still has a relatableness to her, and is also good-hearted.
And that's the thing, because I remember when we talked about, this is one of the deep cuts we were talking about many episodes back, when we talked about Juno. And we were talking about how Diablo Cody wrote Juno's dialogue, and she didn't sound like a normal, like, contemporary, quote-unquote contemporary teenage girl, because she talked like she was in a 1930s, like romantic comedy. Everything had to be, like, a snappy, witty joke, comeback, whatever, for, like, the first act of the movie. And I didn't think it worked in that movie because I couldn't relate to it, but I think it works in this movie because the whole movie is built around that kind of dialogue.
Yeah, it just fits into the milieu of what's going on. I mean, I do kind of like that we get to see an underbelly of Washington, D.C. through the eyes of this character and her friend, one of the journalists actually, who is antagonizing Jeff. I can't remember the name of this character. It's Diz, right?
It might. I think it's Diz.
Okay, so
he had like a weird nickname, and I was like, how do you get a nickname like that?
Yeah, and but I wish there could have been more explored into that, because it seems like they get you right up to the entrance of the underworld of Washington, D.C., and then they turn around and lead you back towards Jeff's like idealized version of it.
I think that's the thing where Capra was like, okay, because a lot of this movie is like at the time, this movie was super controversial because it was ultra progressive and all that other stuff. But I think he knew that he could only toe up to the line so much about corrupt politicians and weird scandals in the Senate. He can only toe up to that line so much before he would turn off his audience. Yeah, and I think that's kind of interesting. You know, when you're a director and you're a creative person and you're making that kind of movie, you need to know the limit to go before you like kill your career, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. And if I think about the audience that would be viewing this movie at like the tail end of the Depression, it might be a little depressing to think, our political machine that's ruling us through these dark times is not a good thing.
Oh yeah.
What else do I have to live for? you're a farmer in Kansas. You go down to your local movie theater. There's a new Frank Capra movie out. Oh,
Yeah.
that's great. I need to see a comedy.
Then if you're a rural farmer in Kansas, that was probably an hour drive, or you got on a cart to get to the theater.
Some AC, a popcorn, and I
Maybe took your best girl with you.
oh, my crops died this week.
The Dust Bowl is ruining my society.
Yeah, and then you get in there, and then you just see Clarissa Saunders dealing with, cigar smoking back alley. Yeah, it might not have been
Might not have played.
So I get it, and, whatever. Fine. If there was ever a director's cut that had that in it, I'd love that, but...
Can you imagine Frank Capra just...
Frank Capra probably didn't even exist back then for directors.
Oh God, it probably didn't because back then these were studio movies and producers were involved at every level of production.
And
so
even then, practically, like studio heads at that point were just the producers.
Oh yeah, well studio heads were, God, jury, and executioner. They did everything.
Yeah.
But the thing is that. Could you imagine if Frank Capra just made a hard noir, like a hard political noir that just starred like Sanders?
Yeah, I feel like that's happened, and I feel like the Coen brothers did it.
Probably, yeah.
It feels like exactly you're describing a Coen brothers movie.
The Coen brothers combined, they make Frank Capra making noir movies.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, but... all that aside, the act is written, and then we're really into like the juice of the story. The act in question is supposed to be that Jeff wants to bring back to his home, and unconveniently the site of what the businessmen want to build on.
Yeah.
This wonderful, idealized summer camp in which boys from all over America can come and learn about their country and Washington and
Jefferson and Ben Franklin.
All those guys.
It's supposed to be like the all-American like summer camp where kids from like the inner city and kids from like rural America can all go and commingle. And this is one of the controversial things that happened when this movie came out was because Jeff was talking. He's like, I want kids who are white and black and Jewish and Asian to all come together and learn each other's cultures so they can understand each other. He wanted empathy for everyone.
We can't have that.
Exactly. Yeah. Again, 1939 America was not that progressive. We'll do it. And also, can you imagine like this came out in 39 and you're just like, wait, that's a controversy?
Yeah, earlier when I talked about the exponential change between these time periods, well, I guess that's another way things have changed.
Yeah.
And, good.
Well, I'll take that change. Claps all around Frank Capra for calling that one out.
Yeah. But also, to counter the point, though, summer camps are pretty much gone, so...
Yeah.
Give and take, I guess.
Yeah, that's another thing when he talked about that, because it's like, I know you had, like, the camp experience.
Yeah, I remember describing it last time.
Yeah, I never had, like, a summer camp experience. That wasn't, like, my thing. Like, during the summers, I would go up to, like, my aunt and uncle's farm in Fresno, like, every other weekend or whatever.
That's a pile of ass.
What?
Fresno, California.
Fresno, California in general is where they lived was rural as sin. Their closest neighbor was like 2 miles.
Really? So
like it was farmland.
My idea of Fresno is Fresno City, like the proper Fresno. I guess you're more like the Visalia type and all that.
Yeah, I put it like this where it's like, oh, we're going up to Fresno, but it's like, oh, where's the city of Fresno? It's like, oh no, we're in Fresno County. And it's like, oh, what's that mean? It's like, oh, the city's like gonna be 10 miles that way. You don't need to go there. We got the old swimming hole around the back. But don't go in there in June because that's when all the piranhas come out. Like,
that's better.
Super rural.
Piranhas in Fresno sounds.
I'm pretty sure they were joking, but
But yeah, so I guess the kids would go up there for the summer and play politics, or I guess
basically he just
play Constitution and all that.
Yeah, like, hey, we're gonna be all American. We're gonna teach you about the frontier and wilderness and all this other stuff. Basically, just the idealized summer camp experience your parents thought you would have when they sent you off to summer camp.
Yeah, and the kids can send in nickels and dimes or whatever it is.
Yeah, because
Pay for it.
that's all Jeff wanted was like a loan from the U.S. government to build it, and then the kids would just like send a dime or a nickel or whatever to like repay back the loan, as long as it was like a flat loan with no interest. But let's be honest here, that sucker's gonna be they're gonna be paying that stuff off for the next 1,000 years.
Yeah.
If there's any interest on it, paying in nickels and dimes. But whatever.
So
But it's a really like a nice idea, right?
Sure.
It's
and
wholesome.
It perfectly exemplifies his character. So it gets to the Senate floor, and obviously because, America. Everybody loves it. There's a standing ovation until it's revealed that the land that they want to construct on is already being proposed for.
Dam, right?
Yeah, for the dam that the businessmen that plucked him out in the first place are trying to secure through the opposite senator in his state.
Yeah, so what it is his opposing senator, played by Claude Rains, I believe his character's name is Payne or Senator Payne or something like that. Yeah. He is in bed with this very rich tycoon Senator Payne is telling this tycoon, hey, we're going to build a dam in the state on this property of land. If you buy the land when it's cheap right now, the U.S. government has to buy it off of you to build there. And then you buy it super cheap. We offer it to you we buy it back from you at maximum value, and then you and me split the money. Yeah. Which is super illegal.
Very, very corrupt. And might I add, a glossed over detail.
Very glossed over. Like, both these guys would be in federal prison.
Yeah, and what I think that gets back to the root of why the underbelly bit is so underserved in my mind, is that those are very serious things going on there.
Yeah.
And it just feels like they're like, it's a story point, but we don't want to depress you, so don't even pay attention to it.
Just don't worry about it. It'll be fine.
Yeah. But all fine and dandy. Now we have we have a story. This is a real, bona fide, there's conflict, and there needs to be some resolution story. About halfway through the film.
Yeah, like the first half of it is we just learn about Jeff and Mr. Smith and like his whole idealized his ideology of America, and then it gets kind of like then it crashes in on top of him when he finds out about Payne and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
And then he's like, well, I gotta do what's right. I gotta fight for my country, and he is forced to basically filibuster to try and convince the Senate to stop this dam from being built.
Yeah.
And for those who don't know American politics or just don't know what a filibuster is, essentially, if you're on the Senate floor and you refuse to yield, basically you refuse to let anybody talk, because the Senate has to work in some sort of order, so you have to yield the floor to somebody for somebody else to talk. You can keep going indefinitely as long as you never sit down, you never leave, and you just don't stop talking. And what that is for is stuff like this, where it's like, oh, this bill has been put up, and like only half the Senate has read it, but we're all going to vote on it, and no one's been able to read it, so I'm going to filibuster to try and get the bill to not pass, or I'm going to filibuster to try and make a point that is an unpopular opinion but needs to be heard. Yeah. That's kind of what it is. Some filibusters go for like 20 minutes, some for like an hour.
Yeah, famously there have been some that have gone on for hours and days at a time.
I think the longest one was like almost 2 days.
Yeah, I'm actually interested to look that one up real quick.
Yeah, because it's more of an endurance test than it really is than something you're trying to get It essentially is an endurance test at the end of the day.
Okay, so the longest filibuster ever was by Strom Thurmond, his unsuccessful filibuster of the Civil Rights Act of 1957. Yikes. Lasting 24 hours and 18 minutes. And
wow.
You know what? Good.
All right.
That's not the thing we want to filibuster against.
Yeah. But that's the thing. If you are against an act or a bill or whatever, you can filibuster to try and push the vote to another time, so it gives more people time to vote on it or think about it. Or you're trying to convince them that it's a wrong bill and you shouldn't vote on it. It's a whole thing, and it's has been used for good and bad.
Apparently so.
Here it's used for good. In Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, it's used for good, and he starts talking and talking and talking, and he's trying to convince these people that America should not be bought by companies. It shouldn't be owned by men. It should be for the people, and what we're doing is wrong. And it's super
this is actually
heartwarming.
One thing about the movie that kind of bumps me in a way, right?
Mm-hmm.
That the message that Smith ultimately wants to say is not technically the opposite of what's going on opposite of him, antagonistically.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, he just wants to teach kids about American democracy and, like, having passion for it and all these things. But really, it's not that his opposition is against democracy.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, they're using it to their advantage because democracy is an imperfect system. And, yeah, unless we use it responsibly, these things can happen.
Yeah.
It's that there's a scandal going on and none of the other senators know. So,
And some of them I don't think would care.
yeah, well, because he is accused of being a perpetrator of this scandal instead of Senator Payne. Senator Payne is actually the one that accuses him, I believe.
Yeah.
And there's a whole hearing that he storms out of and all this stuff in the middle of the movie that leads to a low point and all that crap.
Yeah, and that's kind of why he goes on the filibuster, because they're going to kick him out of the Senate, which means he'll have no more like staying power or sway to stop Payne from building the dam and basically swindling the taxpayers out of a bunch of money. Yeah. So that's why he filibusters, because if he stops talking, he gets kicked out of the Senate because he lost in the Judiciary Committee. So he just has to keep going and going and going and try and convince the entire Senate that he's telling the truth, that Senator Payne is actually trying to swindle the taxpayers, and that that's wrong, and that the American people deserve honest politicians. Which God damn, that makes you feel good, right? That there's people like that exist.
Right, and I just keep going back to how I want this movie to be a little bit more gritty, and because think about the interesting story you could get out of Mr. Smith having to dig up the dirt on Senator Payne and his dealings.
Oh yeah, it would be such a different movie. Like, they have to do the whole thing where he's digging up dirt, and then Payne finds out, and he has to send somebody to kill Mr. Smith, but he has to use his Boy Scout wiles or whatever to like run through like the Washington stuff and like set up traps and shit.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be so gritty as to like somebody gets shot in the middle of it.
Yeah.
It just has to be so far as like somebody sneaks through an office while the senator's out to lunch. They grab some files. The senator's coming back. They yell, "Hey, there's a goose chase across Washington." That'd been interesting.
Yeah,
to get some action out of this, but
I do get what you mean, because this movie has a very deliberate pace. We'll put it like that. It's an older film, and older films tend to be a little bit slower.
Yeah, it is odd how like methodical it kind of is at certain points, whereas like a lot of movies at the time were not. You wouldn't typically describe them as methodical. Yeah.
They're older movies, a vast majority, they weren't very methodical. They were just slow. This one's knows what pace it's going in and knows why it's going at that pace. Yeah. But that's Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Is there anything else you want to go on before we hit up the American president?
This is something we brought up last time, and I just want to take a moment to praise it.
Yes.
On a technical sense, is the cinematography in Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
Yeah.
This is
gorgeous.
I remember it being a good chunk of our conversation, but now it is just worth mentioning that if all else, watch this film for the incredible shots that they get out of a medium that was very closed off at the time.
Oh, yeah.
Film back then was very set-based and was still based on what would then become TV production.
Mm-hmm.
everything's on like a 2D plane in front of the screen. But
everything is in a studio. It's your sets are built like the week before.
Yeah, but in this movie, we actually start to see glimpses of depth in the shots, of extreme long shots.
Also, when he goes to the Lincoln Memorial, the Lincoln Monument.
Yeah. Our first glimpse into guerrilla filmmaking.
Yeah. So fun fact. Frank Capra was not allowed to film at the Lincoln Monument. Like, you just weren't allowed to do that back then. You can. Hollywood studios used to not have enough money to buy off city permits, so he went there with like him, a camera, and a sound guy. And back then, cameras weighed like 40 pounds. And him and Jimmy Stewart just did a whole scene at the Lincoln Monument, and they just hid the camera from the security guards around there. They just pure guerrilla filmmaking in like the 30s.
Yeah.
And it's also gorgeous there. Like the lighting coming through the pillars. Mr. Lincoln's looking like, literally larger than life. Like he looks like otherworldly. And it's amazing because it's like there wasn't any lights there. That was natural light. The set, there wasn't any like actors there. It was just people there while he was shooting a lot of those like exterior stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the Senate was
Senate
a big
floor.
one you had.
Yeah. You described it last time as being like a totally produced set.
Yes.
But, like, this isn't like we're saying with the television style sets. This was an actual sound stage converted into the Senate floor.
I think what they said was it was 2 sound stages that they jimmied together because they needed it to be. They made a 1-for-1 replica.
Yeah.
Of the Senate floor on like sound stages.
And they get every bit of that size into the shots.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, the big, like at the end when they do the giant like wide shot of the whole Senate, and then you're looking and you're like, oh, that's not like composite or like some weird camera trickery. That's just a giant set.
Exactly. And looking down from the press boxes, looking even what gets me is the shots where they do like a senator in the left part of the frame in the foreground, then like Smith in the right part in the background. Just like, I love the composition of that depth. I mean, you just think it's like so common sense nowadays to do things like that, but
Yeah.
It really was the first time that it had ever been done. And I think if anything,
Yeah, well, it might not have been the first, but it was so early in like people knowing what you can do with a camera.
yeah, because I think last time too we discussed that this had come out the same year as Gone with the Wind and Wizard of Oz, 2 other movies known for their innovative cinematography.
Oh yeah.
As among other things, but it is odd how you get a year of these.
Just unequivocal bangers of film.
Yeah, just out of almost nowhere. I mean,
Also,
really,
didn't Casablanca come out in 39?
no, I think that was 41. Let me Google it real quick.
Yeah, because if we get Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, Gone with the Wind, Wizard of Oz,
42.
and 42. So close.
Yeah, but and that's actually to my final point about the cinematography. Lovely scene with lighting, and when Saunders goes to find Smith, lamenting about his political depression.
Yeah.
With the shadow in that shot during their like 2-person dialogue, a good little precursor to again the noir. It's very everything else in the movie's light. It's filled with light. The composition is not heavy. It's always
Everything looks pretty.
Yeah, and then you get this one kind of dark moment in the movie, emotionally through the shot, and it's odd how familiar it feels knowing what was to come only a few years later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. The technical aspects of this film are fantastic.
Yeah.
Which is something that I think might be lost on newer audiences because the things we're praising are things that this is influenced much later. Now every movie is doing this.
Yeah, and that's everybody always goes back and are praising it for the reason that we're covering it in this episode is it's supposed to be some big old political hurrah. And yeah, Smith gets his way. The senator that was framing him confesses everything.
Gets his comeuppance. Yeah.
It's a great story point, honestly, because it happens with the most drama in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But who needs that when you can talk about all this cinematography?
Yeah. I'm talking about cinematography. Let's talk about another movie that basically inspired a whole like 7 seasons of a television show.
Yeah, who
But
would know? I mean,
who would know? You know, it's not like there was the same writer,
yeah.
like half the same cast. You
The
know,
character was going to be in the movie.
Yeah.
You know, what they may even use the same set. It's
they
like,
did. Yeah.
So
On that note, let's
yeah,
jump over.
We'll get to our quick break, and then we're going to jump into the American president, or as Sorkin would say, the American president.
American president.
Because he has a weird accent, but we'll get to that right after this break. Dean, I found a great way for us to do something cool and to make a little money on the side.
Great. I've been looking for a new place to put my money. What do you got?
No investment needed. In fact, it's super easy, and there's creation tools we can use to record our podcast right from the phone or computer.
Wait, why would you record a podcast on your phone? You want? Never mind. Where do I put my money for this?
I don't need any of your money. We can even get our podcast distributed to big streaming platforms like Spotify and Google Podcasts.
Oh, I get it now. We're talking big business here, okay? So you're going to need a lot of money from me. How much money are we talking here?
No, definitely don't need any of your money. In fact, we can make money from the podcast with no minimum listenership.
Okay. Now I think I'm getting what you're going at here. We need to spend money to make money, so we're talking some big gains here. Big gains.
No, definitely no. I don't need any of your money. Just all we need to make a podcast right in one place.
Okay. So what you're telling me is that you're gonna need a pretty big check from me for this podcast. So do I just make it out to cash? Because it's no problem for me. I'll just write it up right now.
No, listen, Dean, just head over to anchor.fm and check it out. You'll see why Anchor is the best place for us to record, edit, and distribute our podcasts. And I definitely do not need any of your money.
Shut up and take my money.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, from our commercial break. Since our break has happened, the election's gone down, things are on fire, aliens have invaded.
Yeah,
We wish we knew. The lizard people are real. The water's turning the frogs gay, people. But
that actually would be a better outcome than anything.
Again, it's one of my favorite out of context sound clips.
Can you believe he hasn't run for office yet?
Who, Alex Jones?
Yeah.
I
really expect that he would have run at some point in the last few years, but
like he might honestly, if he did run for office, like I don't know how that would turn out.
Poorly.
Can you imagine he runs for office and he runs as like a staunch, like super progressive Democrat, and people are just really confused. They're just like, what?
But to him, it would just be like because nobody knows if Alex Jones is a performance artist or not. So
I think he's just Andy Kaufman. Like Andy Kaufman just like faked his death, got old, and became Alex Jones.
It does just seem like a long con because of all those brain supplements and all those whatever he sells on alexjones.com/store.
Oh my God, I don't know. I do know that during the election that Alex Jones and Joe Rogan are doing a live stream of the election results.
Screenshots of that.
Yeah, apparently that's going to be a thing. I think Eddie Bravo might also be there, or Tim Dillon might also be there, but it's going to be something. It's going to be something.
Well, I'll wait for the clips off that.
Yep, same.
But until then, we are thoroughly entertained by this next movie we have.
Yes, actually, this is a good one. We actually had 2 pretty good films this week.
Yeah, this is The American President, written by Aaron Sorkin, directed by Rob Reiner, a classic duo of the 90s.
Oh, yeah. Also, this was during Rob Reiner's streak, I believe.
We did go over that Rob Reiner had just fallen upon this Frank Capra. Well, actually, we determined that he had gone past Frank Capra in making just a line
of masterpiece film
movies.
Oh yeah, because what is it? He had this is the bad part, because we know he did these things. We just can never remember the order. Bring up his IMDb, sir. Let's get the streak
for a second while I figure it out.
Yeah. So the thing is with Rob Reiner and Aaron Sorkin. So Aaron Sorkin, I think, is no surprise, is one of the probably the best living screenplay writers, and Rob Reiner is one of those directors you don't really hear about. You don't really you've seen. I can guarantee you've seen his movies,
Absolutely.
but like his name might not sound familiar. But we're gonna list off his streak, the unbroken streak of bangers this guy came out with for like a solid decade.
Talking specifically about movies directed, there are a few hiccups in between releases, but you could probably kick it off with This Is Spinal Tap in 1984.
One of the greatest comedies of all time.
Yeah, pretty much wrote the book on mockumentary.
Oh yeah.
Was there even a mockumentary before that?
Technically, there was like Cannibal Holocaust, but that was like a horror movie. Those are like found footage movies. Were before that. I think this might have been the first mockumentary.
The Sure Thing is what comes after that.
Oh no, The Sure Thing's good.
Okay, okay. Stand By Me then comes next, which is
Stand By Me, the quintessential coming of age story.
Side note: is it just a general rule that as your third film? I know he had done a couple TV things before this, but do directors just do an adaptation as their third film all the time?
Maybe.
It seems to be a thing.
I know that like
maybe this is just some sort of like superstitious. I think of it so I notice it more, but.
Well, that honestly that might be a thing because I know a lot of movies you watch nowadays are adaptations of things, and it's usually like the first movie a director makes is like, oh, this is the passion project they wanted to make. The second movie is their passion project, but with money now, and the third movie is either okay, now it's their new fresh idea, or shit, now you guys are giving me like actual real material to work with. Yeah. It's really interesting. I'd be kind of interested to look at a lot of directors' oeuvre and see how many adaptations there are.
Yeah.
But yeah.
From Stand By Me, we go directly into one of the greatest movies of all time, The Princess Bride.
The Princess Bride, yes, which we are going to be covering this month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll be recording that episode very soon.
Yes.
From The Princess Bride, we hop over to a little-known movie called When Harry Met Sally.
One of the greatest
romantic comedies ever.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
One of the most creative ones, I would find.
Oh, yeah.
Then there's Misery after that.
The movie that got Kathy Bates her Oscar. That one.
Right.
Yeah.
A Few Good Men comes after that.
Oh, well, one of the top 3 greatest courtroom dramas of all time.
Right.
Yeah.
North comes next.
That one I've never seen. I'm not even sure about that one.
We're gonna open a new tab, that one, just to check out the poster to see if it looks interesting. Oh, that is a young Elijah Wood, I believe.
Oof.
Am I correct? Yes, it is. Who plays the main character. Sick of the neglect he receives from his mom and dad, a young boy leaves home and travels the world in search of new parents. Can we talk about real quick the specificity I put in the dialogue lines versus the stupid general descriptions that happen in most log lines?
Yeah.
Give me a little bit more here, dude.
You're like, what's the kid's name?
I mean, if you really want to, this could basically outline the Harry Potter series. I mean, if you
kind of
sick of the neglect he receives from his mom and dad, nay, aunt and uncle. A young boy leaves home and travels the world in search of new parents. Well, maybe it's instead that he gets secret powers. But
actually, no, that's just Lord of the Rings.
Yeah,
it's Elijah Wood. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Sick of the neglect he gets in the Shire, he goes off on an adventure to search the world for new friends and to save Middle Earth.
I don't know.
Boom! I just made the Lord of the Rings log line with less than 5 words.
I need to watch this though because Jason Alexander is in it, and I love anything that Jason Alexander is in.
Jason Alexander's good.
Needs more praise. But from that we move to the American president, the present of where we're going to be talking about, and then it starts to devolve. Ghosts of Mississippi. Have you? No. There's a TV movie documentary we're not going to count. Spinal Tap, The Final Tour, we're not going to count because it's a video short. Movie. The Story of Us. No. Alex and Emma. Everyday Life TV movie doesn't count. Rumor Has It. Why does that sound familiar?
Because that was the Adele song.
Yeah, this is just some Jennifer Aniston movie.
But that's besides the point. So we have established that Rob Reiner had essentially through the 80s and into the 90s, the guy had a untouchable streak of
which ends
films.
Here, actually, now that we've found out.
Yeah.
This is the last hurrah not really, because he goes on to do things like The Bucket List and LBJ. But
Which again, Bucket List, another of the best growing old movies. But yeah, the guy's really good at his craft.
Who would have thought?
Rob Reiner just was real good at making quality films.
Yeah, crazy. But all that aside, we then get this. We found was the second of Sorkin's movies, right?
Yes.
Well, beside that, I have it still pulled up here. Malice, which is apparently about this couple. The wife is operated on. It sounds really boring.
Yeah. So this is
stuff.
So yeah. So this is the American President, Aaron Sorkin. He's writing. He is still hungry, new to the game, and Rob Reiner. He's at the tail end of his amazing movie streak.
Yeah.
And they also get this star-studded cast because we have
absolute blockbuster.
Oh, absolute blockbuster cast here because we have Michael Douglas, we have Martin Sheen, we have Michael J. Fox, we have oh god, I keep forgetting that character actor's name, but he's in, or is it Richard Dreyfuss? No. Oh god, what's his? Is it Richard Dreyfuss? Is that the guy?
Yes, he's Senator Bob.
Yeah,
the fuck.
Senator Bob, whatever the fuck. But yeah, like
yeah, we get Michael J. Fox.
Yeah, I got Michael J. Fox.
Yeah.
But we have like a slew of like names in this movie, and it's a pretty short movie. I think it's only like in the 90-minute range.
No, it's 2 hours and 9 minutes.
It's 2 hours and 9 minutes.
But that's a good point to bring up, is that this movie really is paced well for its length.
Yeah,
it keeps your attention the whole time. I thought.
Yeah, it's not like in Mr. Smith where it's 2 hours. You feel the 2 hours, but you can like vibe on it because if depending on how you like Mr. Smith or Jimmy Stewart's acting, you can vibe on it.
Yeah, I was gonna say the last 40 minutes of that movie you really felt it really is, because that's the entire filibuster. It lasts almost that entire 40 minutes.
Oh yeah.
It's just a lot to cram. Like, I think we commented the last time we recorded this episode that there's a lot that shouldn't work in that movie that ends up working well to its benefit. But that's one place where I'm like, I'd question if it still works.
It'd be a thing that if you met Frank Capra in the editing room, that would have been a point of, yo, Frank, you might want to cut it down a little.
Or even just, like, in general, the script. I can't imagine a script nowadays that would get that pushed off, well, albeit without one of the most famous directors being attached to it, which is probably why
the studio was probably like,
Well, the studio also probably was like, we have zero standards for how we make these things right now, so
you're just like, will it make us money? Frank, you make us money. Go make us money.
Yeah. But The American President is a much different film.
Very different beast.
As Sorkin obviously does, he structures this and constructs everything with the utmost purpose.
Mm-hmm.
I'm particularly a fan of the opening to this film because it's simple, yet exactly what you would expect, yet it has this nice little exclamation point at the end of the scene.
Oh, the opening is perfect for this movie. It tells you everything you need to know about our president, and it tells you, oh, this guy is missing this thing. He wants to get something, and there's something standing in his way. It sets up the whole movie. It sets up the whole movie in the first scene.
Textbook, and should be a quick reminder to anybody who, again, loves the education of these movies that sometimes textbook is textbook because
it works.
It works, yeah. It's just supposed to do what it does. You shouldn't reinvent the wheel,
And I think that's a thing we talked about last time we talked about this movie. I'm sorry if I keep interrupting you. I'm a terrible human being.
Well, Dean, this is a political episode, so it's only in the nature.
I would like to filibuster, sir. Do you yield the floor? But so the American President, it feels like, I guess, not generic, but by the book.
Yeah.
I think we came on that last time we were talking about it, or at least I noticed it when I was watching it, was that it feels very by the book. It's a romantic film. There's a little bit of comedy, a little bit of drama. We have the scene of the two, like, male lead and the female lead kind of coming together, and people are watching them. And it feels the only complication is that he's the president.
Yeah, pretty much. Which is, again, if you're following the rule of your main character at least, should be the perfect character to follow the story. Well,
Yeah.
who else to follow the story about what if a president was dating than the president?
Yeah.
It is, I said simplistic earlier, odd how it's like it feels like you could write this movie. And I don't mean you specifically, Dean. I mean anybody.
Yeah,
out
I'm not
there.
a
It's
great
like,
writer.
If anybody thought about this movie just from idea to conception to finished product, is you'd probably come up with something very similar.
Yeah, if you told somebody, it's like, hey, I need a script in like a month, it has to be a movie about a politician or the president falling in love with a lobbyist. It needs to be about 2 hours long. Make sure it's paced pretty well.
Or even
Yeah.
if it wasn't as specific as that, I feel like obviously there'd be a best friend character.
Yeah, which would be your vice president.
True, that we do not get any. Do we get a vice president in this movie?
That's Martin Sheen.
No, he's not the vice president.
Or he's like the head of the cabinet or something like that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, but I don't think.
I thought he was the VP.
No, I thought it was like his press secretary. No, it's something like that. One of his cabinet members, not his.
Oh man, I was way off.
Which is odd that I didn't notice that until now. That there's not really a vice president. There's a few more syllables in that I think I should have made, but I'm gonna dig around for that for a second. Why don't you scoot us along?
Yeah, I'll try and scoot us along. So the thing is with the movie is that it's a very standard romantic comedy kind of plot, except there's not a lot of comedy.
Chief of staff. That's what
He's the chief of staff. Oh, okay.
So not a lot of comedy.
Yeah, I mean, there's funny bits in the movie, but it's more like, oh, the wordplay is funny or the character interactions are kind of funny.
Yeah, it's Sorkin style of witty.
Yeah, it's not like you're gonna laugh out loud and like you're watching Tommy Boy. You're gonna, you get a nice smile, get a little chuckle.
Yeah, I can picture that you, the viewer, are sitting there with your glass of Chardonnay, dangling on the fingertips while you sit in your armchair watching this movie, and you let out a hearty ha 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 anytime there are jokes made.
Yeah, that is the level of comedy we're looking at here. But that's kind of besides the point, because it's not. I don't think it's meant to be comedy. It's meant to be like a cute romantic film that humanizes people in power. Because that's kind of the point. It humanizes the president, because the president is. His wife died of like breast cancer like years ago. He's basically had to be the single father raising his daughter.
Sympathy knob is turned up to 11.
Turned up to 11, and he is a president who is adamantly trying to do the right thing, even if it's the more painful thing. Because we have a scene where he has to order a missile strike on a what is it, like a office building or something like that.
It's a counter airstrike after a terrorist attack in Libya. I can't remember.
Something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah, some Middle Eastern country, because this was made in the 90s. And he's like, okay, what time of day is this building have the least amount of people in it? It's like, oh, it's the night shift. He's like, okay, how many people are going to be in there? He's like, 12 people, maintenance workers, janitors. He's like, okay, send it in there because it'll hurt their chances of doing another attack. It sends the message, and it has the least amount of casualties. And then they're like, sir, you did a great job. That's a president thing to do. And him playing, again, building up the sympathy and why we should like him, is he essentially tells them, look, a man is going to die, a janitor is going to die in an hour, and he is not going to know why he died, and the reason he died is because I sent a kill order to end his life. I don't even know his name, and he probably has no idea any of this happened. And that makes you feel like that humanizes him. He's like, he's this guy who has to make the hard decisions.
I do think that it's meant to humanize him, but I think that this is probably not, I wouldn't call it my least favorite, but probably the scene that I found the least connected to the story, because, listen, from the moment you said that his wife died of breast cancer and that he's insecure about his re-election because he feels he was only elected as a widower the first time.
Yeah,
pretty humanizing. I mean,
he's a guy who has a lot of doubt about himself, even though he's the president of the United States. The guy should be balling out of his mind right now.
Yeah, and it's like, I get it's also used as a cock block to the date, which is quite I will say, in terms of writing, you are supposed to do something unexpected at every turn, and that's quite unexpected when you're in the middle of a date. It's just like, it's this weird detour from the rest of it. Because we never really touch on that theme ever again. There's never really a moment in which we go back to this attack and there's an emotional connection that has any bearing on the third act of the movie.
No,
it's just kind of like...
It's almost a throwaway scene. It's almost a throwaway scene just for the character.
A throwaway, or like it feels like the kind of scene where it's like when you're coming up with the idea of a movie about the president, you would write this scene before you even started writing a script and been like, this is great, this gold is going to go in. But then once you actually get through the whole, oh, this is a love story, doesn't really feel like this fits anymore. But at the same time, certainly there's some good dialogue that comes out of it. And the subtext of like the guy who's on his night shift, yada, yada, yada.
Well, to your point, that's actually a lot of what this script was originally, because Aaron Sorkin, he had the idea of like, oh, it's going to be a political thing, and he just wrote a bunch of different scenes in like the notebooks and all this other stuff as he was building the story. And the stuff that wasn't used for the script of The American President was used as jumping off points for the first season of The West Wing. And that's like a lot of that. So I think that might have been kind of why this scene feels a little wonky, is it was probably one of in that group of scenes.
It's interesting you mentioned this anecdote, because I just found a little note about that conception. And it is that originally actor Robert Redford approached a number of screenwriters with the single line premise, "The president elopes," unquote. Sorkin, on the basis of his treatment, was selected by Redford to write the screenplay with the expectation that Redford would star. What a boner if you're just a new screenwriter with one movie. Well, I guess two movies, but really one movie.
1.5 movies.
Yeah.
And Robert Redford, one of the big Hollywood, like, cool guys, wants to work with you. Yeah.
Reiner was brought aboard to direct, and that's when Redford dropped out, which is also like, imagine this movie with Robert Redford.
Oh, God, it would have been so different. It would have been so different.
I like it.
You'd be down?
I like this version, but I also would like that version. Because that's where I think that
that's
maybe that's what it is that the Michael Douglas is just, he's not quite... I just feel like Redford, after All the President's Men and movies like that, could get the drama, like the darkness out of that scene, whereas Douglas ends up making it a little bit like heart-wrenching.
Yeah,
instead.
well, that's the thing. It's like, because originally the president was going to be this, like, he was going to be a Republican president, a war veteran, and all this other stuff, and then, oh, he's dating because his wife died in childbirth when he was out in the military or whatever. I think that was the original concept for that one. And then they changed him to Michael Douglas, who was a Democrat who had never served, and his wife died of breast cancer while he was like running for his first term or something like that.
Yeah, I guess ultimately what broke up the original conception is that Redford wanted to do the love story, but Reiner wanted to do something more about politics, which is apparent. This movie, the politics bleeds into it at certain points, and certainly actually works as the contention for the whole story. And it would be pretty hard to ignore, I guess, now that I think about it.
It'd be one of those things where it's like, I can see where both of them are coming from. Redford is like, no, this is a love story, and Reiner's like, no, this is a message story. You know, it's about politics. It's about, you know, the president and the humanization of the president. And Redford's like, no, it's about, you know, love, and it, you know, it can be anywhere, and you can find it anywhere, no matter who you are. Blah blah blah.
Which is weird, because it's like Reiner does that, but it just ends up being a little bit more layered than the simple idea
of the love. Yeah, I think that's the thing. They both approached it, and they both saw a different path to the same goal, and I think that's probably why that broke apart.
I also think that it was the execution we got because, well, simply put, Aaron Sorkin was, quote, high on crack cocaine.
Oh yeah. People who don't know, Aaron Sorkin had a hardcore drug problem back in the 80s and 90s. If you didn't know, all your heroes were cokeheads.
I knew it was cocaine. I didn't know it was crack cocaine, which is like...
He's from New York.
That's heavy.
Yeah.
But neither here nor there. the other things about this movie, other than its troubled conception,
and in the star-studded cast behind it, let's talk about the actual details of the movie.
Yeah. So the plot is pretty straightforward, like we've been saying. It's that there's this lobbyist, and there's like a meet cute, I guess is how you could describe it. Of she
Meets the president. They're just like, ooh, they're kind of infatuated right away.
Yeah, she puts her foot in her mouth in front of him, and he likes that because nobody talks to him like a normal person.
Because he's the president.
And that begins his very charismatic pining after her, which she doesn't take very seriously at first, because who would?
Yeah.
The president is much more of a star in this movie than I think he would ever be in real life, by the way.
Yeah, it's one of those things, because we have people who like faint when they see him.
Literally.
He goes into a flower shop to buy flowers, and the Czech girl just like faints in front of him. And don't get me wrong, if the president of the United States walked into like the coffee shop or whatever, I'd be like, oh shit, that's the fucking president. Like, what the hell?
Yeah.
No matter who the guy is, it's the president of the United States. Like, that's big deal, right? But no one's gonna faint.
It just felt a little animated for.
Yeah.
But I get it. It's the exclamation point to the scene, so whatever.
Yeah, but
it's also a late punchline on an earlier joke. Well, yeah, fine.
Yeah, but let's get into this. So the actors, like, do you like how the actors portray their roles? Because do you think Michael Douglas is the president? Do you think he sells it?
I wish he could be the president.
I mean, that charismatic smile, the smart, witty dialogue.
I wish this America was as simple as our America.
Right?
Boy, howdy, do the political problems that they face in this timeline, they seem just so simple, so straightforward.
It seems so nice and quaint.
Yeah.
And I think all the actors, for that point, just do a good job. I don't think there's a bad reading from anybody.
No, a lot of the side characters are very enjoyable. People in his cabinet. Martin Sheen is a great sidekick.
I think Martin Sheen is just good in a lot more movies than people think.
Love Michael J. Fox.
The man is American treasure, even though I think he's Canadian. No,
is he?
I don't think so. Actually, I think he is. I think he is American. I know somebody. I know there's somebody who everybody says is an American treasure, but he's Canadian.
Interesting. Yep, he's from Edmonton, Canada.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, okay, so he is Canadian. Nailed it. Yeah.
Go figure.
The more you know. North American treasure. We'll do that.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
So that Mexico could share it too.
All right. So
deleted scene. What's Michael J. Fox's Mexican movie? What's the title?
Casa de mi DeLorean.
Oh.
Sorry, now I'm imagining Back to the Future, but it's all in Spanish.
Chupacabra?
What's the Frighteners in Spanish? That one.
Yeah.
So I think everybody in the cast does a good job. The story's basic, but I think it works. I'm just trying to compare this to Mr. Smith Goes to Washington without it being.
So actually, there's a reference to this.
Yeah.
Later on, when Mrs. Annette Bening, who plays our leading lady in this movie, she shows up for one of the meetings that he
at the White House, and
I believe they're gonna have lunch or something like this. And she's talking with the press agent who's leading her in, and one of the security guards who apparently, according to the press agent, shouldn't at all be fazed by anything that's going on. This is day in, day out for them. And then he all of a sudden agrees that, it's all pretty fun. Yeah, he likes the...
It's like it's all, what is it, Capra-esque, literally referencing Frank Capra.
And it is. There is a tone to this movie that is certainly, especially with that soundtrack.
It's fair. It honestly, it does feel
there's
like a Capra movie,
there's
right?
There's a gilded nature about America over this that Mr. Smith has as well.
It's kind of weird that we picked two movies that. So we picked Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, and then we picked American President, and American President feels like a Capra movie, kind of. Romantic movie set in this big,
and
political
maybe that's the
world.
reference too. Is it supposed to be that?
Mm-hmm.
but ultimately too, there's you see signs of aging in the American process.
Yeah.
That coming through are Richard Dreyfuss, Senator Bob, something.
We just
or
call him
other.
Senator Bob.
I had his name a second ago, and then all of a sudden it's gone because he reminds me, like, if you cross, he looks like, first of all, John McCain. So
Yeah,
there's that.
he definitely has the weathered Republican look about him.
But then it's like he also reminds me of Dick Cheney.
Kind of. I can see that because
He has like the stoicism of Cheney, while like the
facade
the
of
composition of McCain.
Yeah, and I think honestly that's probably why they cast Richard Dreyfuss is because he already kind of looks like that, and then he's also a good actor. He can just play that kind of role. Then he's very offhanded about like the quote unquote scandal he's trying to show on the president so he can get his bid for the election.
Yeah, and in the scenes in which he's talking to his base at all the political rallies and everything are very familiar to what we've experienced. Maybe not now, but certainly around like the 2012 and 16 elections.
Yeah.
Totally familiar. You know, a lot of that sensationalized.
I think that's the thing. This movie feels so familiar now. It feels way more familiar than Mr. Smith. I can tell you that much.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot more of this. You can watch this movie and you can still kind of get the whole vibe, right? Like you're like, oh, this is definitely a movie this is definitely like a world I can believe exists kind of thing.
Yeah.
Might be a little cleaned up, but it exists.
I don't know. The other thing I really like about this is that it is a precursor to The West Wing. I mean, I think you've explained it to me last time. What then led Sorkin from this to The West Wing, which there was only a separation of. He did like a show between them, Sports Night.
Yeah.
Was there any insider information you had from last time? I can't even remember now.
Oh, well, the biggest thing is like Bill Clinton let them roam around the White House, do production stuff, but they didn't actually shoot there. They just got all the
Right, because it's a recreation.
Yeah, it's a recreation for the White House. Yeah, because I don't think you're allowed to take pictures in the Oval Office.
Yeah,
or film inside.
They have to be like for the president specifically.
Yeah, for the president specifically, and it's a whole like security thing.
Yeah,
because they don't want people to find out the exact layout of the interior of the White House, for obvious reasons.
Though, no offense, the building's 300 years old.
You can get the plans. You know the layout, but they don't want people to know where like guards are set up or where like checkpoints are. That's the thing.
You don't want anybody crawling through the vents of the White House.
There is actually a story of a guy who hopped the fence and tried to run in. I think might have been during George Bush's presidency. Ran in screaming with a sword, like a katana. And this is when like one of the security guards of the CIA went to go take a leak. And he was just wandering around the White House for like 10 minutes before anybody noticed him. He was walking past people. And the people were just like, who the fuck is this guy? And until he just kind of like wandered out through the front door, and then security were like, "Oh, sir, you gotta get back behind the board or behind the fence." He's like, "Oh, okay," and they just like let him out. You can look that up. I'm pretty sure that was a real thing. A guy hopped the fence of the White House and wandered around the White House for like 20 unattended minutes, like looking for the president, and just couldn't find him. And then they just kind of escorted him off the
that
property.
guy would be dead now.
He would. Oh yes. Absolutely. That man took his life into his own hands when he hopped that fence.
Real quick, just because I just saw it on his IMDb, there's apparently going to be a Few Good Men TV movie, which I'm sure means streaming movie. But
oh yeah, and it's probably going to be on Netflix. Going to be like a 13 episode run.
No, it says TV movie, so I feel like it's not going to be a series.
Oh, that's weird.
So maybe just a reproduction of it, and he's writing it again. So I don't know. I don't know.
But yeah, so that's the American president.
I guess so.
I'm sorry, everybody, that was a little tight on time, but it's the thing with the American presidents. It's a good movie, but it's just the things that are unique about it. I feel like Sorkin's writing gets refined later on in Reiner's direction. We've already seen him do so many great, like a lot of great films before this, that this seems kind of, it seems like the both of them knew what this movie was and didn't try and go beyond that.
Yeah, and there's not a whole lot that's like outstandingly apparent about this movie. It's very, none of the cinematography is particularly outstanding, and I don't mean that in like a negative way. I mean that it doesn't stand out.
Yeah,
it's not extraordinary.
It does what a movie does. It doesn't bring attention, like the editing doesn't bring attention to itself.
It felt a lot like watching television actually while watching it.
Yeah,
the soundtrack's great, but it's about typical to what you feel like the soundtrack would be. There's no track in particular that sticks out as a title track or a theme to the movie. Acting's great, but again is kind of typecast and run of the mill.
All the actors in this, you feel like they turn in the exact performance you would expect of actors of that caliber would turn in. It's weird. It's like, because it is a good movie. I think we can agree that it's a good movie.
Certainly.
But it's not a great movie. Like, you can enjoy, if it was on TV, you would stop and watch it, but I don't know if I would pay money to go and see it.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I might pay. I don't know if me being probably 1 year old at the time probably wouldn't go see it.
Probably not.
But, it's. Then again, I don't think I would really pay money to go see Mr. Smith Goes to Washington either.
That's true. That's true.
Which I guess kind of brings us to the suggestion, whichever we think is better to suggest.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of a hard point of this, is because we have Mr. Smith, which is, classic, one of the best movies of all time, yada yada yada. But in terms of modern day watchability, I think it lacks, because it's very slow. The characters are very kind of hokey, but it has a good heart to it.
I also think it would kind of go over people's head nowadays.
Yeah, and there's certain stuff where it's like it doesn't translate well to modern audiences.
Yeah.
Whereas The American President, it's not outstanding, but it has a lot more like watchability, just because it's way more modern.
Yeah.
But there's nothing that's gonna blow your mind about it, and I think that's where the disconnect, where we have to kind of come together and figure out which we would recommend, to be honest.
Well, what I really would recommend is My Date with the President's Daughter.
Oh, classic! That movie is an actual masterpiece. It has magic. It has the president's daughter.
Is there magic in that movie?
Yeah. That's the guy who's going out with the president's daughter. He's like a amateur like magician or whatever. He's like in high school and he does like magic or whatever in his spare time. Like, that's his hobby.
Oh my god.
He actually does a thing where he escapes a thing of handcuffs to get him out of a fight at a biker bar.
Yeah, never mind. I don't recommend that movie anymore.
What? Why not? No, that movie's cute.
I think I default to, without putting any huge thought into it, just The American President.
If you had to shoot on that one?
Yeah, because while I enjoy Mr. Smith Goes to Washington as a film guy, again, it goes back to the whole, unless you're particularly into the history or production of movies, it just doesn't feel like a movie anybody would really care for anymore.
I don't know. Because I think this is actually where we're gonna have a difference. Because honestly, I think Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, I would recommend more, because I think more people should watch it.
Oh, more people should watch it.
Yeah, and I honestly, if it's a thing, because it is a long movie, but I think you can definitely vibe on it today. Like, it might be a thing where it's like, okay, this is a little, I'll go get a drink during maybe like this scene, but I think if you really got down to it, I think a lot more people would just enjoy that Jimmy Stewart sincerity. I think it's the fact that if you like Jimmy Stewart, you're gonna love this movie. If you don't like Jimmy Stewart, then you're gonna hate this movie, because the movie it's carried so much by his performance.
Yeah, it just kind of feels like, and maybe this is also because that was the first place I watched it, the kind of movie that you're forced to watch in a history class, which is unfortunate that it is that way. I also feel like, and again, this is kind of treading into waters that I don't think I want to, but the kind of movie that for some reason somebody would pick something out of it that's just cancelable, and that saddens me, because it's like, we get it, it was a different time.
Yeah.
You don't need to point that out to anybody because we all know that not everything was the same back then as it is now.
Yeah, I kind of get what you mean. Like, this is one of those movies where if you dug down deep enough, you might be able to find something that you can cancel out of it, but it's like, it's so... It's weird. I think it's just because it's like, it's that nice slice of Americana that you don't get anymore. And if it's a thing, because the point of this episode was the feel-good movie about politics, and the American President was the feel-good movie that that humanized the president, made you feel good about the people in power. And Mr. Smith Goes to Washington it's like, oh, it's a feel-good movie that made you believe in, like, oh, democracy works, you know, the people in power are valuable, but, you know, good-hearted Americans can push it through.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing. That's why I want to recommend Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Like, it makes you feel good about politics. American President makes you feel good about the man, but not the machine he's in.
Yeah, that's very true. And maybe in that way you're right, because I think the one thing that holds me back from ultimately making that decision is I feel like, again, not to skirt too close to anything, but the problem with politics now is adjacent to, but not the same as what is going on in Mr. Smith.
Yeah.
There's lobbyist culture is like this. I think everybody can agree on. Lobbyist culture is just an ingrained part of the political process now, which is horribly dystopian to think about, but it is. That's kind of how it's been for several years, and
well, we go over that in next week's episode.
Oh, yes, we will. And kind of the opposite problem, too, that I think is the reason that it wouldn't connect with people is it's not just the lobbyists or people trying to control politics anymore. It's the politicians themselves that people have a problem with now. And ultimately, like, the guy being plucked from small-town America who's patriotic, people would still have a problem with in some way. Especially because I don't think that guy would be creating a bill for a summer camp.
Yeah,
kids.
I know. It's the thing where it's like, I don't know, like, it's too cutesy. I'll give you that. It's a little too... Yeah.
But, you know, that's kind of... Maybe that's also commenting on, like, the story of America as a whole is there's an entire century of history between both time periods, and in between that, the country matured in a way that really did change the policy.
Oh, yeah.
That's...
Like, honestly, talking about the... Oh, sorry. You go ahead.
Well, no, I mean, if you want to talk about that, what you mentioned earlier with, like, the change between then in the 60s.
Oh, yeah.
A movie that probably perfectly exemplifies that is Born on the 4th of July. And in a way, that's like, that movie outlines exactly what I guess I mean. Is now people are so skeptical either which way about how the government should be that there's no actual consensus on
the amount of jaded Americans have gotten about their government went in 1939 to being like a 3 to like 1990 being like a 7, and 2020 it's like a 10.
Yeah.
Like it's gradually increased, and the 60s was the big jump.
Yeah. So I don't know. If anything, maybe Mr. Smith is a better recommendation too, to notice that and then to make you think about it. So I confer to you on this one because of that fact, rather than actually getting what the movie is going to get you out of it. Maybe just watch it for the sake of juxtaposition.
I think that's probably the line I'm on. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. It gives you perspective about how America used to be and about how America is now, just from living in the now.
Yeah.
But Mr. Smith Goes to Washington also gives you such an optimistic look as to what democracy can do and what America could be, that it kind of makes you feel good. It's like, you know, we need more Mr. Smiths. We need more Mr. Smiths in politics. And if that's the line you want to go on and live by, it's like, you know what? More power to you. We need more nice guys.
We live in a society.
Oh yeah, we live in a society. Yeah. Joker 2020, boys. Go out and vote Kanye.
The birds work for the bourgeoisie and all that.
Yeah.
No, that's actually opposite of Mr. Smith. Don't believe it.
Don't believe in communism. Mr. Smith would not be down with that.
Yeah. But
that kind of wraps us up, I guess.
I think that does wrap us up.
Yeah. Sorry if we got a little melancholy at the end, but
you know, I think we did end up in a better place than when we began, and I think that's what these movies are trying to do. And you know what? yeah, I hope this has inspired you to go out and vote.
And go watch a movie.
Go watch a movie, certainly. Tell us what movies you're watching, you know?
Yeah.
Tell us who you voted for, who you didn't vote for.
If you don't want to tell us at all, then you just say Kanye, because that's
who I voted for.
You voted for Kanye. You voted for him twice.
Yeah. I stuffed a whole mailbox full of ballots.
Oh, wait, which mailbox? I lit one on fire and then put another one up and filled that one with Kanye votes.
Yeah, I stuffed multiple.
Perfect.
I have an underground team. I'm working for Kanye, actually.
Is that why you had all those Yeezys lying around?
Yeah, you want a pair?
Oh, that'd be awesome. I'll take the American one.
Ballots and.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'll
pay for things.
So,
Dean, end of the episode. Why don't you tell them where they can find us so that we can sell some of these Yeezys to them?
Exactly. So if you want to find us, you can follow us on our Instagram page. That's the _feature podcast. We're on Instagram. We post stuff all the time. You can also listen to me on the Film Club podcast, or same name on Instagram. You can also hear us on our YouTube channel, which is In the Frame.
Right.
See, I remember things.
Yeah, there you go.
And we're also starting another podcast, which we should have. Our first episode should be out, and our second episode should be coming shortly, which is Too Obscure for TV, where me and David find kind of really hard to find and obscure movies and watch them, commentate on them.
Abnormal experiences in film.
Yeah, very abnormal experiences in film is a good way to put it. And beyond that, you can find me on my Instagram page. That's SchmittyPower at Instagram or whatever you do, and I post movie stuff. And David, would you like to plug anything?
No, I mean, just go vote.
Oh, you're plugging voting now. Ooh, just like an American.
Yeah, vote Kanye.
Kanye 2020.
So I guess next week we'll be watching a couple more political movies on the opposite side of this emotional spectrum.
Yeah, movies that just tear into politics in a funny way.
We'll be watching The Campaign with Will Ferrell and Zach Galifianakis, and Thank You for Smoking,
starring Aaron Eckhart, and actually just a huge star-studded cast on that one.
Yeah.
Which you will be surprised as to our views on that dynamic soon.
I think so.
Yeah.
Well, until then, Dean.
Until then,
I'll see you in the New World Order.
The New World Order, everybody. WCW.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Peace.